Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We're a group of diverse friends who offer our takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. I'm your host, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I am joined today by the Collector.
Hey, this is David.
The Intellectual Introvert.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris.
And the Deluxeifier.
Hello, it's Pete.
Today is the first part of a three-part series of episodes where we count down our top 15 board games of all time. Usually we release an episode every 2 weeks, but for the next 3 weeks, you're in luck. We'll drop one a week as we work our way toward the best board games ever created, well, at least in our opinions. Today we're going to start our countdowns and cover numbers 15 through 11. I'm a noob, so in this series, I'm only going to do the top 5, but the rest of the crew has their list ready to go, so let's get this countdown started. All right, Pete, we are going to start with you. First of all, what method did you use to rank your games, and then kick us off with your number 15 game?
Okay. Well, I have all my games stored in BGG, Board Game Geek. If anybody's interested in seeing what my game list is, it is my first and last name. So it's Peter Medved. So look it up. Tell me what you guys think about my list. But what I did was I used Pub Meeple, and I think some of my fellow podcasters might have used that as well. And I pulled all of the games that I have ranked at 8 or higher. These are games that I personally own, not just games that I've played, because there are some really good games that I have not that I've played, but I don't own them. So this is my personal list from my personal library. Of those games, I also pulled the games that I've only played in the past 2 years, meaning that I played them quite a bit and I really enjoy them. Of that list that I have, I think I had 271 games on my list, 67 which are expansions. So I still have a little over 200 games.
Wow.
Doing that, I was able to get back 36 games to rank. So I did my rankings. So my number 15 is In the Hall of the Mountain King. It was published in 2019. It has a rating of 7.6, a weight of 2.84, and the ranking of it is 605. Now, you guys know I do like my deluxe games, so I do also have these listed out if they have my deluxe rating, and this one does. So in this game, you're digging tunnels into the Hall of the Mountain King, and the idea of it is you're going to be hiring trolls along the way. Those trolls are going to help you dig those tunnels, and you're going to uncover idols that are there. And you're trying to move those idols as far into the hall that you can. That way you can gain the most glorious rewards for your digging in, all that. The really cool thing about this game is this has a cascading resource gathering method. So you have a roll of trolls. It's called a troll smoot, whatever that is. You start out with 4 trolls on your bottom, and those are going to give you resources. So the way that you get resources is basically you lay out a troll, and that's going to trigger all of the trolls underneath it, putting more resources on the board. There's about 4 actions that you can do in this game, so it goes really quick. So you can either cast a spell or activate a workshop. The other thing you can do is you can either hire or dig tunnels. And the last thing you can do is if you have enough space dug out in a contiguous area, you can dedicate a hall. And basically the last thing you can do is move those statues. So that's pretty much the game. That's my number 15.
Yeah, you had this laid out over the weekend. I think you played this with Dave. It looked very cool with all the mountain dwarves and things like that on digging in the tunnels, which is very thematic. So I would like to get a chance to play this with you, though, sometime.
Yeah.
Game I've never played, but yeah, it sounds interesting for sure,
Okay.
Pete.
Yeah,
David,
I'm
what's
not
your
playing
15?
it at all. Okay.
What's that?
Let me give a crap what I think. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
I've never
Chris?
played it. I have no idea.
Oh, yeah.
All right, David, why don't you give us the reasons on how you chose your top 15?
Mine's a lot, variable, I guess, compared to Pete's. Pete was very, thorough, I guess, in how he built his list, and maybe Chris will be too. I kind of just randomly put mine together and then asked myself, what games do I actually like? And so I kept, I used a number sheet. I didn't use any fancy Pub Meeple thing. I just kind of went onto an Excel sheet and just kind of Exceled it out. But I guess that's the Chinese in me. But anyway, so the number 15 game that I came up with, and my list could be kind of random, is going to be Sequence. It was made in 1982. It's by Doug Reuter. And I might get a lot of kickback from some people that are in the modern board gaming space. But Sequence is one of my all-time favorite games. I've actually played this game I have stats online. I think I played it over 1,000 times. It's like 1,152 times I played this game. And a lot of people say this game is very, luck based or dependent. So basically, what you do is you're trying to get 5 chips in a row. So how this is done is there's a board with every card on there. So you're playing with 2 decks of cards. So every card, like an ace or a 9, you're going to find a corresponding space for that on the board. What makes it unique is that there are no jacks on the board. So this was actually the first time I ever realized that one jack only has 1 eye and the other jack has 2 eyes. So the 1-eyed jack could always remove pieces from the board, and the 2-eyed jack is like a wild. You could place it anywhere you want on the board. So the game plays really fast. It plays really good in teams. You could play 2v2, kind of things like that. But the reason why I like it so much, I think, is just because it's so simple. You have like 7 cards in your hand. You're putting one down, and especially once you learn the board, it's just going really fast. And I tend to use this game as an icebreaker or a social game where you want to sit down, you want to play something that's not too thinky and have a great conversation with people, but yet at the same time play something that has a little bit of meaning, a little bit of weight. So it's been a family favorite of ours, and so I had to put it on the list at number 15. And I think my win percentage out of the 1,100 games I played online, I'm at 76.21%. So for people who say that it's just luck or a 50-50 shot,
Which I do.
I win about 3 out of 4 times, and I'll play anybody. And I'll beat you 3 out of 4 times.
I love Sequence too. David, we had a tournament here one time at your house, and it was a great time. We did knockout rounds, and it's overall just a really fun game. And if you can really get the gelling with you and your teammate, I love the component of this game that you don't talk to your teammate, really. You kind of have to read each other's minds and know what they're going to pick. And so I really like this game as well. Good choice.
Yeah, I've played this a couple times, always over here. Not one of my favorites. I did not run out and pick it up or anything like that. I felt like, hey, if you get a jack versus if you don't get a jack is a huge difference on how likely to... Maybe it's not the only determiner because there are choices you're going to make along the ways. But who gets those jacks, to me, is where the game swings.
Yeah, I haven't played this game probably in 40 years. So I really don't remember
So you
much
played it
about
right
it.
when it came out, Pete?
Yeah. So no, I don't have any comments. But old school games can be very good.
I did have this on my list of... I thought this might show up on your list somewhere, though.
I know.
So,
I was debating with it. We do play a variant because Chris, what he says is it's true. Sometimes somebody can get a run of jacks. So we play a variant where sometimes you start with a joker, and a joker can be used as a 1 or 2-eyed jack, and everybody starts with one in their hand, so you can decide when you want to play it. So it gives you at least one powerful move in that game.
I'll remember that next time we play Glory to Rome. All right, Chris, tell us how you came up with your list.
So my method was somewhat similar to Pete. I also went through BGG. I didn't limit myself with respect to time. I just looked at every single game that ever showed up as a play, and I asked myself, does that have a chance to make my top 15? So the first part was pretty qualitative. Hey, do I think that's got a chance or not? And if it did, I added it to a list. And in the end, I had a list of 42 entries. I also looked at my shelves in the basement just in case there was something I hadn't played in a while, before BGG, but man, it was fun. I didn't see anything. Most of the games on my shelf that aren't in BGG probably shouldn't be on my shelf. So I entered those 42 games into Pub Meeple, as Pete was mentioning, and I just let the ranking engine do its job. Then it kicks out a list, so I had this ranked list of 42 games. My intent was to go in there and, hey, if something doesn't quite feel right, I'll move some things around. I ended up not moving anything around. I could make a good case for why things were where they were, and so I just went with what Pub Meeple told me. Nice. And so I'll just jump right into it. My number 15 top game of all time is Gaia Project, designed by Jens Drogmuller and Helga Ostertag and published by Capstone Games. This is the follow-up to Terra Mystica, and it's a precursor of Age of Innovation, which I think, Daniela, you liked. It has a space theme with a ton of really different asymmetric factions that you can play. It has a great automa, so as a solo player, I like that. And you can even add it, though, to a multiplayer game. It works well. There's a modular board, varying end of round and end game bonuses, so there's a lot there, and you're trying to balance keeping your economy running and moving up the tech trees. It's heavy. It's like a 4.39 on BGG. And it can be really tight at times. I mean, really, really tight. Typically, the first round, you can't hardly do anything. And it's really the fifth and especially the sixth round, you're like, holy cow, everything's running. And then right at the end, you just try to squeeze out that last little bit. But it's just so good. I mean, our copy was my son, so I can't play it in person much anymore because he took it with him when he moved. But it is on BGA with a pretty good implementation there as well. This is ranked number 12 overall on BGG. It deserves it. To me, it's just so good. And that's Gaia Project, my number 15 top game of all time.
Yeah, I have not played that one. We did play you said there was a game before it's based off of
Terra Mystica before Age
Yeah,
of
we have
Innovation,
played
I think.
that. So if it's anything like that, yeah, it would be a good game.
Yeah,
David?
this is a game that I definitely want to play. We just haven't had time yet. But yeah, it looks really good.
Yeah, it takes a while to wrap your head around it, but it's fun once you get going.
4.39 sounds pretty Gaia to me.
It's just pretty good. There's an expansion. I don't know if it's out already.
Danielle's
or
going to
not.
love this one.
Yeah, well,
I'll be
we'll
real
get it.
sick on that
We'll
day.
get it to the table. We'll get it to the table. Unfortunately, it's 4 players max, so we'll see how
Oh,
that
darn.
works. But yeah, there is an expansion called the Lost Fleet. It's a 2024 expansion. I'm not sure if it's out already or not. I haven't seen it yet, but I hear it adds a lot of new content. So pretty interested in getting my hands on that as well. But I don't know if it adds a 5th player. I didn't see that.
Okay, awesome.
You can
Thanks.
always play Age of Innovation.
Yeah. All right, so that was number 15. Let's move on to number 14. Pete, what's your 14?
Yeah, number 14 is a game that we had a battle of the funnest. It did not win, but it came in very close. So my number 14 is Dune Imperium. It was published in 2020. It's got a BGG ranking of 8.4. The weight is 3.05, and right now it's rated number 6. So it's number 6 on the board. In this game, if you can control the spice, you can control the universe. You're trying to influence the different tracks that are going on. Battle and buy your way to control Dune. So the mechanics in this one we talked about before. This is really a worker placement and deck building. 2 things that go together really well. They are multi-use cards, and there is some conflict in this, so I really like that. So basically, you're using your cards to either send your agents or your workers out into different areas of the board, and each area has a special thing that it can do. So those cards have to match those areas, so you can't just send anything. So, and then there's also a second phase where after you're done deploying your agents, you're still going to have some cards left over, and you can use those for the actions that are at the bottom of the card. It's really racing up 4 different influence tracks. Those influence tracks are going to give you some additional bonuses, but in this game, as you go up, or if you're the highest after you get to a certain point, you get more influence, but that can get taken away for you. So that's kind of that's kind of cool. There's quite a bit of player interaction, maybe not direct action, but when you get into the conflict, there is some battling that's going on. You have some additional cards in your hand that you can boost your warriors that are in the conflict to try to win that event, and given that event could give you a lot of things. It may even give you some extra points. The expansions can really change the way that this game plays. I know when we played, we did one of the expansions, which I think some of you guys like, some of you guys might not have. Those are Rise of Ix and the Immortality.
Yeah, so I think, Pete, when we battled this one against Lost Ruins of Arnak, I was on your side as well. I was a Dune Imperium fan, so I also rate this one really highly. Kind of just ditto everything you said. I think this is a great game, both with worker placement and deck building combined with a unique battle system. So very cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing the last couple times we've played. It's been fun. The race to the end, everybody's kind of working on different things as we're going up along the tracks, and just very, very interesting depending on what cards come about and what everybody's end goals are. So I like it.
Yeah, this is one that I thought might actually make it to your top 5, but I guess I don't know enough about you yet to be able to say for sure. It's not in my top 15. It actually is sitting at number 17 on my list, so almost made it in. I think it's a really good game. Again, we talked about this in one of our earlier episodes. I think it's a good game. It just, when I first played it, I was like, oh man, I got to play that again. I got to play it again. And then after a few more plays, I was like, okay, I'd like to play this again, but I didn't feel like it was something I necessarily wanted to or needed to have in my collection.
All right, David, number 14.
Yeah, so my number 14 game of all time is Schadenfreude. It was made in 2021, and it was published by Studio Turbine. And this is a little box, small box trick-taking game where the unique thing about it is that the second highest trick wins the trick. Not the first highest card, but the second highest card. So kind of how it plays is there's cards ranked from all the way from number 9 all the way to a -3. And so you're going to try to play out tricks. You have to follow suit. It's a follow suit game, a must-follow game. And basically, I really like it because not only does the second highest trick always wins, but it's the second or the closest person to 40 points actually wins the game without going over 40 points. It's all about timing of when you want to take points. So the game plays to 40 points, but how it actually ends is that somebody has to go over 40 points. So it's a person that's the next closest. So when the game plays, it's an interesting tick-taking game in the fact that you have to tell yourself, when do I want to actually take points in this game? Because you don't want to fall too far behind from the pack, because if somebody accidentally scores like 20 points in a hand and they were at 26, the game's going to immediately end and they're going to boot off and the next person closest is going to win. But at the same time, you don't want to be, so far in front that people load you up and kick you off the board. So I just love this game. There's so many kind of intricacies about it, and it plays really fast, so you can keep playing this game multiple times in a game night. And I just love the small box factor as well. So it's a game that I'm always willing to whip out, and I always have it on me at all times. So yeah, good times.
Got that thing on you.
No, I do like this game. It is an interesting mechanic where you're trying to stay in the pack, and I think that's really where the charm of the game is, because a lot of times you're trying to take those tricks or not take as much, or you're also looking around to see who else is going on, because you may not want to trigger the end of that game. So yeah, really, really good pick.
I played this with David, you, and Chris before. We played it kind of just the three of us at one point, and I kind of liked this game a lot because it was that second person was getting the win, and I'm pretty sure I did fairly well in that. Now, don't tell me to play a real trick taking game when you got to be the top scorer. I'm just burning and crashing at that, but it was very interesting. So I like that game too.
Yeah, I'll just say I like this one. I'll let you know how much a little later.
Gotcha. All right.
Okay.
Well, Chris, give us your 14.
Yeah, the next game on my list is very different from my last one. I did notice when I was going through my list, there's a lot of variety in this first 5 here, and this is a great example. My number 14 top game of all time is Ticket to Ride, designed by Alan R. Moon and published by Days of Wonder. So this was the game that actually got me hooked on modern board games, and I've played this a ton, both on the table and on my iPad. I've literally played this over 1,000 times on my iPad alone. I know that because the app that I have tells you when you've hit 1,000, and when you get that, it's kind of neat and it's kind of humbling. It's kind of embarrassing. So, but this is a favorite for me and my daughter Julia. It inspired me to buy 6 different expansions with different maps, almost all of which are also good. I created my own map for Northeast Ohio where we live, so I was really into this game for a long time and still enjoy playing it whenever Julia asked for it. It's a simple game. Certainly a gateway game. You're collecting sets of train cards and building routes to claim bonuses. You can play it mean or you can play it friendly. I prefer to play it friendly. This is only ranked number 242 overall on BGG, which to me is a travesty. I think it's the heavy weighting that goes into BGG, because this is a really great game. It is simple, but it's just so good to me. That's Ticket to Ride, my number 14 game of all time.
I actually thought this was going to be higher on your list. So interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a game that I definitely played really early into the hobby as well. I think it definitely has its thing. I love the map that Chris created. If you ever get to see a picture, maybe we'll put it online or something. But it's a really cool map, and I understand why you like this. I think we bought the Legacy version. We just haven't had a chance yet to try to get a group together and play through that. But I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I have the European version of Ticket to Ride, which I think if you look at the rankings, I think that's somewhat a little bit higher than the standard version.
It is. We covered that on one of our earlier shows, and we found we liked the American version better. I'll put it that way. So,
but it is in my collection. I don't get to play it often, but it is a great gateway game you can pull and teach people, because it's just a handful of cards and you're trying to do that route building. I know there's some in-depth strategies that you can really do if you're trying to hold all the cards and try to lay out at the same time. But no, it's a good game.
All right, Pete, why don't you give us your number 13 on your list?
Okay, my lucky number 13. This is a game that I play a lot with my wife. She really likes it. It is Viticulture Essential Edition, and recently I bought the Tuscany expansion on there, which if you're going to play it, I would really recommend getting that. This came out in 2015 in BGG. It's a rating of 8.0, weight of 2.89, and right now it's rated about ranked at 38 on the list. Basically, with this game, you manage your own vineyard. You're planting grapes, harvesting them, creating wine, taking orders, fulfilling them. This, again, you guys are going to see a lot of this in mine. Worker placement's a big part of this game. Hand management with your orders that you're trying to fill. So with the 4 different seasons, there's different things that you can do in those different seasons. In the springtime, you have a couple actions. You can build buildings. You can sell some wine, things like that. In the second season, you're going to be able to do more things like plant those vines that you might have been able to buy. The third season is where you're going to start to harvest those grapes. And then again, in the fourth season is where you're actually going to sell those. So deciding when you're going to use those workers is really important because you're limited. And, in those different seasons, there's a whole bunch of different locations that you can go to that can give you those different powers. I'm not going to go into every one of those. But the really great thing with this game is with the worker placements, you also have one worker, which is called a grande worker, and he can trump anything. So basically, you never really get locked out of a position, but you want to hold that guy back until you absolutely need to use him. So with viticulture, again, this is a game I do enjoy. I play it a lot. It's a great worker placement. I really feel like I'm building a vineyard and growing that. So that's my number 13, Viticulture Essential Edition with the Tuscany expansion.
I've never played viticulture. I started looking through the rules, which I've done a couple of times. The first time I started looking through, I was like, okay, I'm not ready for that. I just wasn't in the mood for that. Second time, when we thought we were actually going to play it at one of our nights, I was looking at it. I thought it was going to be okay. The only thing that makes me pause is that I've heard David's opinion on it before. So I'm going to kick it over to David.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I don't drink wine. So when I played this game, I found it to be a little dry, but I could see why people like it. It just didn't hit for me, so I don't know if it was, some of the mechanics, like the different seasons and just how slow the beginning build was. I just felt it was a little bit slower than I would like. And so I just felt like it really took its time trying to pick up pace, kind of like a fine wine. So,
So maybe the theme did come through.
I know, maybe it did, but
slow, aged like a fine wine. There you go.
Yeah, maybe the more you play it.
I do remember the game was slow at the beginning, and it took a couple seasons and stuff for us to really get involved in this game. The different colored cards, too, I remember playing with that. Took a couple rounds to really sink in and understand what I was pulling, because each of those stacks has a little bit of a different power or theme, I should say, throughout them. So I would like to play this again. I don't know if it would be even on my top 100, but there it is. So, all right. All right, David, how about you hit us with your number 13?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep with the wife theme that Pete started, and this is a game that I play a lot. I played a lot with my wife when we were playing it. It's My City. Came out in 2020 by Reiner Knizia, and it is a competitive legacy game where you use polyominoes to build out a city. And so it reminds me a little bit about SimCity when I used to play that game back on a computer, and I've always been into city builders, and my wife is kind of the same way. She's always, on her computer either playing The Sims or the SimCity. And so to this game, just kind of sat really well with us. It's really easy. There's 3 different colors. Everybody has the same pieces. So there's 8 pieces of each color. So there's 24 tiles that you have to place on your board. And basically every turn you're flipping a deck of cards. You shuffle them up, you flip them over, and one of those tiles that you'll have will match what tile's on there, and you have to place it. And so you play simultaneously. There's 24 episodes, and each episode tends to go by pretty fast. Like the first ones are like maybe 5 to 6 minutes, I would say. And then it starts picking up steam as you open up envelopes and you start putting stickers on your board, and your boards start to become very different. But we just had a blast playing it. I don't think you're ever out of it. I think at one time she was way ahead, and then I was storming back, because the game does have kind of a catch-up mechanic that if you lose continuously, you do get a little bit better benefits as you open up the envelopes based off your placement of where you place in that particular round. So, yeah, it's a game we love. It's really simple to teach, and one that I would happily play again. So, I don't know if anybody else here has played My City, but...
Yeah, David, you and I played this once after one of our regular game nights. I stayed a little longer, and we played a couple of rounds of this. I enjoyed it. In fact, I mentioned to a couple of you guys that I play with my brother once a week on Board Game Arena. This is on Board Game Arena, and this is one of the games that I played with him as well. And so it's he's still relatively new. We're starting to jack it up, but this is one of the earlier ones, and he was able to pick it up, do well, but at the same time, I enjoy the polyomino laying and was able to enjoy it too. So there's a dice version as well, also on BGA. I like the regular one a little better than the dice version.
I've not played My City at all, but I really like the idea of these kind of legacy games that you can kind of pack it up, pull it out when you need to, and continuous play. So, Chris, when you play online, do you pause it and it saves?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can quit when you want to, and it will. If the same group comes back in and plays it, it knows where you're starting.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I think that's a really cool game that gives you time allotments when you only have maybe 30 minutes to play a game, and you're still advancing that game in and of itself. So very cool. Chris, number 13, what do you got for us?
Yeah, the next game on my list is another shift, very different from the previous two I talked about, but it's not necessarily going to be new today because somebody stole my thunder. My number 13 top game of all time is Schadenfreude, designed by CTR and Studio Turbine. This one was a bit of a surprise to me when it ranked this high, but when I thought about it, it makes sense. I did really enjoy this game. As David mentioned, it's a relatively basic trick-taking game, except for that second highest card thing that really just messes with your mind. And even after playing it a lot of times I'd do something, I'd grab a card, and Dave was like, "Well, what are you doing?" Okay, never mind. I forgot again, no matter how many times I played it. But you throw in a couple negative value cards, and then all of a sudden you've got this really unique game that really is a blast to play. It's not ranked high overall. I don't know if you mentioned it, David, but it's like 2,817 on BGG when I looked at it. I think it should be higher. It does play 3 to 5. It's a bit quirky. It's new to me this year, and I enjoy it every time we bring it out. I hear there's a relatively basic but pretty good solo version out there by somebody. But that's Schadenfreude, my number 13 top game of all time, and apparently David's number 14 as well.
Yeah, that's pretty close. We were almost same number on that one.
Is this a game that you can get relatively easy? I thought when we initially played it, it was kind of hard to get.
No, I think it is a hard game to get. Maybe that's why it explains kind of the lower ranking. You know, I went over to Europe and I was looking for it and I had a hard time finding it. I ended up doing it through trickyimports.com, and they have a couple copies out there right now too. So if you're looking for a copy, you can go to Tricky Imports and you can find it right now. But a lot of times it'll go in and out of stock there too. But yeah, it's definitely harder to find for sure.
You love trick-taking games, so I expect to see more on your list.
We'll have to wait and see. You
I
might be
guess so.
surprised.
The mystery is killing me. Okay, thanks, guys. Those are great number 13s. Let's move on to our number 12s. Pete, what do you got for number 12 for us?
All right. Well, number 12 is a legacy game. This one is a full-on legacy game. It is Clank, Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated. This came out in 2019. It has a BGG rating of 8.5. It is really a good game. The weight on it is 2.73. Not super heavy because it uses those same mechanics that you find in Clank. Right now, it is 22 on the BGG list. So in this game, you and your associates start a new company, and you go out in the world, and you're treasure hunters. You're either ridding areas of unwanted monsters or helping people in distress when it suits you. So this is, again, as I mentioned, it's a legacy game. At the heart of the game, it is a deck builder, but you use that deck to not only get points and actually get more cards, but you use it for your movement. So it's really important to learn what your deck's doing as you're building it. Now, each game that you play in this is going to, there's a session, and there's going to be 10 sessions. I'm just going to leave it at that number. And each session, you have different goals that you're trying to do. Unlike the Clank one where you just go down, grab treasure, and come back, this one does have a really great storyline that goes with it. There are some twists and turns and plots and all that. If you're looking for a legacy game to try, this is a really good one. We played this with 3 players, our fifth meeple, Dave, and my other friend, Bob. We committed at the beginning of last year, or no, it's the beginning of this year, and we actually played 1 to 2 times a week over that 10-week period, and it was a commitment to do, but it was well worth it. The second, there's a new version coming out, Clank 2, which is actually going to be coming out here very soon. I think by the end of the year, it's going to be fulfilled. It was in Kickstarter a while back. Anxiously awaiting that one and really looking forward to playing that. It's just a fantastic game. There are some really cool twists. I don't want to give anything away with it as far as spoilers go. You guys need to discover that on your own. But I think you got a copy of it here somewhere. I'm ready to play it again if you want to open that thing up.
So I've never played this game either. I played Clank, the original one, but not the Legacy version. And I do own the Legacy version, and it's something that I do definitely want to get played. I just think it's always, again, hard finding the time. But, you know, if you can get it played, I've only heard good things about it. So it doesn't surprise me that Pete really likes this game.
Yeah, make that commitment to do it, and it's going to be well worth it.
Have you played a Clank?
No.
Daniela? Okay, I haven't either. I'm embarrassed to say I've not played any of them. But when I hear you talk about it, you tend to get pretty excited about it. You've described it really well, and you had me until you said deck builder, and then I lost interest again. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe someday I'll give it a shot.
As each of the guys are talking, I'm looking up some of the games too as we're looking at on BG stats and Travis McCowan, if you ever listen to the Fin People podcast, your picture of Kitty Clank is quite cute. I love that there. So if you go on the images and look at him, he's got his cats interested and ready to play. All right, number 12 for David. Hit us with it.
Okay, so my number 12 game is The Keena's Dead, the second edition. Came out in 2020. It's by Pierre Sylvestre. And it's just a game that I really like. It's a really simple game of area control mixed with a hand of cards. So and in this game, I think you're dealt 8 cards, I want to say, and everybody's dealt the same amount of cards. So on this game, there's going to be 3 different factions that are vying for control of the United Kingdom. It's the Scots, the Welsh, and the English, and they're all trying to vie for control. So everybody in this game, we have 8 cards, and what you're doing on your turn is that there's a certain way that each region is going to get scored. So you kind of set the order for which region is going to be scored. And by being scored means that who's going to take control of this region, who has the most followers there of these colors. And so the colors are blue, red, and yellow. And so what you're going to try to do is you're going to try to manipulate it so that at the end of the game, the person that you're following, say it's the Scots, you have the most Scottish followers. And if the Scottish control the most territories on the map, then you win the game. Right? So it seems like an easy game, but how the game plays is you're just going to play a card or you're going to pass. And when all 3 players or 4 players or however many players are playing the game, when everybody passes, that's when that card will be scored. So in this game, you never get cards back in. So it's about timing, about when you're playing this card to the table, because you can run out of cards in like the 6th round at like 9 territories, and you're just doing nothing for the rest of the game because you decided to go for power moves early. So a lot of times it's when do you play the cards to try to get in there? And then if a region ever ties, meaning that there's no clear winner of any of the factions, then you're going to put an instability disc in there. And if 3 of those come out, then the French come over and they invade England. And then it's whoever has the most sets of each of the followers wins this game. So the game can change on a dime. What you think you might be going for at the beginning, like say like, oh, I'm going to go for the Welsh, and you're doing really good. And then all of a sudden this game plays totally different. And you might be like, oh, I actually have a better chance to win if I let the French come in and try to tie up a lot of the territories on the board later in the game. So there's a lot of different ways to win. This game is always tight, and I just really enjoy it. So it's simple, but yet really there's a lot of really good strategic choices that you have to make in this game.
You first learned this over at my house. I had picked this up secondhand, and Chris, I think you were at the house too, and we played it. I'm actually surprised you like it as much, because I would expect it to be out at the table more. But it is a very interesting game because, as you said, you know, it's when do you play that card? It's not like you get these things back, so you really got to think long term. And you know, if you spend everything early, you know you're out of it, and then you're just at the mercy of everybody else. So, yeah, it's an interesting game.
So I took some notes, David, while you were talking, and so I'd just like to read them in their entirety. Okay, here we go. Ugh. Okay, that's all I wrote down. I remember. Did we play one game or two?
I think we played one game.
Okay, that was enough.
Yeah.
So I did not like that game. Yeah, there were some interesting things, but I also just didn't think there was enough to it. I think the king might be dead because he invented this game. He showed it to people, and they're like, "No, you're done." And so I didn't like it. I would never put this on the list thinking that it was going to be. But I do know this was like just before you went over to Europe, and you went out and bought it so you could take it with you. I think so.
Yeah, and I taught a lot of people over in Europe, in England, and London, and they all really liked the game, obviously, because they know the map pretty well, better than us. But yeah, we had a lot of fun playing this game, and it's something that you could teach pretty easily. It's not too heavy on a weight.
You see David showing up at the pub. You guys, we're going to play The King is Dead.
And I was like, what?
Yeah, for real. Really in England, jeez. Okay.
I could see you in a bar and you're saying, you want to play The King is Dead? And she's like, what?
Long live
you
the
want to play
Queen.
King is Dead? What? The King is dead! Everyone's like, what are you talking about?
Chris, hit us with your 12.
Okay. The next game on my list is probably more along the lines of what you expected to see on my list. Some of you may have thought it was going to be in my top 5. It's not. It's new to me this year. In fact, it's literally the first game I played this year, starting about 1 minute after midnight on New Year's Day. So,
But it lasted till
but it lasted
December,
4 hours.
Christmas.
Yeah. By now, my fifth Meeple buddies here know that my number 12 top game of all time is Maracaibo, designed by Alexander Pfister and published by Capstone Games. I fell in love with this game pretty much as soon as we started playing it. I had a really good first game of it too, and so maybe that helps, but I just enjoyed everything about it. It's a pretty heavy game. There's a lot in it. I've played this with a few of you, as I mentioned, but then the balance of all my plays was three-handed solo, which is really a brain burner. But it was that good for me. I was willing to do that. And again, I would play it, and I was like, oh my God, this is so much to keep track of, and then just dive right back into it. You got this beautiful map, relatively free movement on it, multi-use cards, and I know, David, you're a fan of multi-use cards, though I don't think you're necessarily a fan of this game. A lot of variability in the setup, multiple tracks you have to balance, and what I thought was a pretty fun campaign as well. That I'm not through yet, but you can very easily kind of stash it away, and it'll keep track of where you were, and you just set back up and you keep on going. So I played this a lot when I first got it. I kind of burned myself out. So it's back on my shelf now, but it's going to come back later, and I'll pick up the campaign, like I said, where I left off. BGG has it at 63 overall. It's got an 8.0 rating. I think I ranked it over 9 when I was playing it a lot. That's Maracaibo, my number 12 top game of all time.
If you would have been available Saturday, you could have played with us.
I saw
Dave, Dave, our fifth Maple, and I, we had a little gaming session over at his house, so we played that Saturday night.
Yeah, I saw the pictures.
Yeah, that was an epic night, I think, when we played this game. I don't know why it didn't hit for me. Maybe because I was so far behind and you guys were taking all the good island spots and I had to jump over you or something. But yeah, I don't know. I would want to come back and revisit this game for sure. It just didn't hit for me the first time, but maybe it'll hit the second time.
January 1st.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, we played
Can make it a tradition.
you can play a long game, you can play a short game, depending on how long you go. Most people, I think, when you look on it, say, well, if you're playing it right, it's going to go fast because you're racing around. I think when you're playing it right, you're getting the most fun out of it for whatever it is. But we were milking everything we could get out of that first game, and it took forever.
I remember the next morning, I was like, how long did you guys play for? Like, 6 hours? I was like,
it was 4.
Never again. I had barrage flashbacks.
It was like 3 hours and 51 minutes. I remember I looked at the clock at one point, and it was like 3 o'clock. I was like, oh my God, we're only on round 3. It's another round.
3 of 4.
What are we going to do?
Oh my gosh,
that was
that's
a good
great.
memory.
I love it.
That was a nice pick.
Good job. All right, so those are our number 12s. Let's move on to number 11. Pete, number 11, what do you have sitting there for the last game of this episode?
Number 11 is going to get one of my deluxe ratings. This game is called My Father's Work. It came out in 2022. It's BGG 7.9. The weight is a 3.1. And right now it's ranked at 672. And quite honestly, I'm surprised it's that high because with this game, basically you're acting as a mad scientist. You're doing experiments. These experiments involve body part. There's animal parts that you got to get. There's other types of components that I'm not even going to describe here because
I am suddenly very interested in this.
Yeah, this one is very. It can be very morbid, really, really thematic. You need an app to play it, and I think that's one of the downsides of the game. But I will overlook that to play this game. Dave, our fifth meeple, he played it with me. He entertained my playing it. He doesn't want to play it anymore. But the
anticlimactic.
the interesting thing, again, this is a little bit of a deck hand management, more resource gathering. But the unique thing about this game is you play over 3 generations. So you do a generation, you're building up this map, and at the end of that generation, your character is going to die, but he's going to pass that information on to the future, and you can do that by recording some of those experiments that you did, so you can use those later on. The second generation, you start off basically with a couple coins and an experiment, and you do it again, and you go through that second generation, and again you're building as you go, but those decisions that you make in the game change how the game plays out. I wouldn't necessarily call it a legacy game because it will change from game to game. If you play the same, they have 3 different scenarios that you can play. You can play a scenario a second time, make different decisions, and it's going to send you in a different storyline. And it's super duper thematic. So as you go through those 3 generations, you're trying to build up and finally get to, the ultimate goal, whatever that might be. So I really, really love this game. It's not one that you're going to take lightly. If we're going to play a game, I want to sit down. It's going to be an event. It's not going to be just a gaming session. We make a night of it. My other buddy I play with, Bob, he likes it too. I've gone over his place. We played a couple different scenarios as well. But you really got to like that storyline. It's not so much that you want to win; it's you're unfolding that story. So that's the great thing about this game.
Pete, a show or two ago, we talked about the fact that you were really good at building dungeons.
Yeah.
When you talked about your summer flings, and now you're talking about this game, you're saying we are going to make an event of it. I'm just wondering what do you got planned if we come over next time for a game night here? You're starting to worry me a little bit.
Oh, you'll find out.
Yeah,
Halloween's coming.
Yeah, the game did sound interesting. I don't know about the app, but I'd have to see how it works. That worries me a little bit, but.
Yeah, I wish it was better than it is. It's still good, but there's a story behind it. The app reads kind of like the prologue to the events, but then as you're going through, you make a decision. And it says, okay, whoever has the most money at this time, give that to them. And you get the tablet, and you're going to read something. You keep that information to yourself. You don't need to share it, and you make a decision, and then you hand the app back, and we continue on. Those decisions that you make will affect the game later on.
Okay.
So again, very thematic game. You got to be ready to play this. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, I don't know who to trust, you or Dave. So, I mean, because you guys have, sometimes when you guys are describing this game, and I feel like from both of you, I feel like it's one of those things where who is telling the truth and who is just flat out lying, because there's no middle ground, I feel like, on this game.
This is a love or hate it.
I've never heard of this game. Is it a little like Frankenstein-ish, or like what?
Very much so.
Yeah.
You are a mad scientist, and I didn't get into the details on this, but you're actually managing not only your resources but your sanity. There's a sanity track, and there's another track where you have the villagers. You don't want them to get too angry with you, so there's a mob token that's coming one way and a monster token that's coming another way, and you want to keep that game in between, because as you hit those things, it's going to trigger other events to you, which usually are not going to be good. So
the pieces and parts in this look actually pretty incredible online as I'm looking it up, and it looks like a lot of people who like this game are taking it and making even more prototypes and probably 3D printing and doing a bunch of other stuff to really make this theme come out, which is always very cool.
Yeah, what I did, because again, I still next leveled it.
What did you do?
One of the components that they have it's we'll just call it stuff, and they give you little bottles.
Oh,
and
yeah.
in those bottles, I put little different things in the bottles. It might be
Eyeballs.
Yeah, eyeballs and things like that.
Pieces, parts of bodies.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Cool.
So,
all right, awesome. David, what's your number 11?
So, my number 11 game, I hope I'm stealing other people's thunder later here, but I'm going to go with Planet Unknown. It was made in 2022. It's by Ryan Lambert and Adam Ryberg. And this is a game that is best known for having a Lazy Susan, on the table where you are spinning it around and you are basically taking polyomino tiles that are in there and you're placing them on your board. And again, I can't talk. But in this game, you play as different corporations that have sometimes different planets, and you're working up on different tracks, and you're also laying tiles down to complete different things on your planet and to kind of colonize them, I will say. And so, yeah, this is just a great game. It plays simultaneously, has a lot of puzzle-y kind of bits and pieces to it, which I always kind of like. And yeah, it always plays fast, in my opinion. About 45 minutes to 55 minutes, even with new people. So, this is a game that I teach a lot, and I really enjoy kind of what it brings to the table. You could also play where somebody's kind of like on a basic, more level kind of planet, like an easier start, where you can take on a harder planet with a harder setup and play the same game as they're playing and trying to go and beat their score. So I think there's different levels where you can play with somebody that I like, that you're not always at the same level at the table. You can play on different difficulties, but yet sit and play the same game.
Yeah, I mean, overall, fantastic game. but I'll reserve my comments.
So I made a list of, I think I mentioned to you guys, I made a list of what I thought might be in your top 5. I also put down what I called honorable mentions of, okay, I think this is going to be on their list somewhere. And I had this down as an honorable mention for you. I thought it might crack in there. I like the game as well. I'll probably have some comments later on as well.
I have no comments because I've never played the game.
So
So
we need to
Oh,
get it
really?
to the table.
change that.
Yeah,
we
we get
need
it on the table for
We need
sure.
to get you a play.
Okay, Chris, round us out with number 11 today. Last one of the episode.
Yeah, the last game on my list today is an old one. It's not super heavy. It's not super involved, but we've had a lot of fun every time we play it. My number 11 top game of all time is El Grande, designed by Wolfgang Kramer and Richard Ulrich and published by Hans im Gluck. It's almost 30 years old, El Grande, as far as when it first came out. So it doesn't have a lot of the complex rules you see in a lot of games these days. It's area majority. Each turn, you're choosing a card to determine player order, choosing another card to determine a special power, and how many cowboys or caballeros you can put out on the map. And then you're taking that action, and that's really it in a nutshell. But every time I played, it's just so good. We covered this game in episode 16. I mentioned then that you only get 9 turns, but you're impacting so much in those 9 turns, even when you do just a little. And so there's a lot of scheming that goes on to try to manipulate the board in your favor just at the right time. There are 3 scoring times, and you got to figure out, okay, when am I going to do this? When am I going to hold this card? Things like that. I just think it's brilliant. BGG has it at number 91 overall. It's got a 7.8 rating. I have it much higher. That's El Grande, my number 11 top game of all time.
Cool. Yeah, I thought this was going to be probably a little higher on your list as well. So great game overall. I like it. It has the great dice tower with it. We've always been, I think, a little bit more competitive in the last couple games we've played on it. It's a little bit more, don't take that card type of thing. But it's always been very fun when you bring it out.
Yeah, I'll probably talk about this game a little bit later as well, but it is definitely one of my favorite games. So yeah, I did on that.
This was one that was in contention, but it didn't quite get that high for me. I do like the game. I think it's fantastic, and I think the call out is the decisions on where do you want to go in the order and taking those particular cards there. I think that's fantastic. It
Yeah,
really
and when
is.
to play it. And again, I think it's relatively simple, but you can do some things early in the game that limit what you can do later when, oh man, I really wish I had this X card, or I know I got a 2, I'm going first, and David whips out the 1 card, and next thing you know, he gets to go last or gets to go first in the last round, and things like that. There's a lot there, but not a whole lot to pick up and understand how to play the game.
Right.
All right, guys, I think that was a really good top 11 to 15, and we shall see where the next kind of rounds take us. So, friends, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. Remember, we'll be dropping part 2 of this series next week, where we get into our top 10 board games of all time. We hope you enjoyed the show today, and we'd love to hear your opinions on where we got it right and where we got it wrong, and maybe even where we, the Fifth Meeple, rank on your list of top board game podcasts of all time. Send us an email at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com. Visit us at thefifthmeeple.com website, or hit us up on social media or in our BGG guild. Better yet, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and if you do, we might just read it on a future show. As always, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, may every day be one of your best. Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.
Goodbye.
Adios.
You never know when you're going to do something dumb.
Where you're using polyonomals,
Polyominous.
Horrible.